Buddy, welcome. This is Dan Freeman with ALA Publishing, and we are really glad to have you here for the May episode of American Libraries Live on integrated library systems. We've got a wonderful panel today. Before we get started, I just want to give a special thanks to our sponsor, Innovative. Innovative is dedicated to providing leading technology solutions and services that empower libraries and enrich their users worldwide. Innovative offers one of the broadest and most complete portfolios of library automation products on the market today. Headquartered in Emeryville, California, Innovative serves thousands of libraries in 66 countries and has offices around the world. I want to first introduce our moderator today, Marshall Breeding. Welcome, Marshall.
Hello.
Great to have you with us. Marshall is a consultant, library technology consultant, a longtime expert on integrated library systems. He's written and spoken about this topic all over the world. Next, I want to welcome Susan Staples. Welcome, Susan.
Hello.
Susan is the IT manager at the High Plains Library District. I want to welcome Sarah Hickman-Auger. Sarah is the... Hi, Sarah. Sarah is the Director of Library Product Strategy at Innovative. And finally, I want to welcome Anya Arnold. Anya is the Program Manager for Discovery and Delivery at the Orbis Cascade Alliance. Welcome, Anya.
Thank you very much.
And with that, I will turn the conversation over to Marshall so we can get started.
Okay, thank you, Dan. And, I'm really delighted to be here to host this episode of American Libraries Live on the topic of integrated library systems. But first I want to say that, terminology is always a bit confusing. And while integrated library systems has been a long-standing term, it might help to clarify things a bit. Today when we talk about integrated library systems in today's episode, it'll be understood to include library services platform, and both are examples of resource management systems that libraries use to manage their collections and automate their resources. I think this is an incredibly interesting time in the realm of library technology platforms of all these different kinds. A new wave of products has been developed, and we're seeing many libraries put them into production. Today's panel includes individuals from 2 libraries that have recently gone through the process of migrating to one of these new systems, and a representative of one of the organizations that helped develop one. I'll be interested to hear both perspectives. I appreciate the incredibly hard work involved on both fronts. For those of you interested in an update on what's happening in the industry, please take a look at the latest American Libraries magazine. It includes my Library Systems Report 2015. I think today's conversation will expand on some of the themes of the report, especially the dominant one and the issue of operationalizing innovation. We're in a phase where libraries are implementing some of these products, platforms, and systems that have been in development for a while. And I hope today that we can explore how some of these library technology systems fare as they see real-world use. So with that, let's kind of begin our panel conversation with a round of kind of responses from each of the panelists on our initial question. And what I'm asking each one to think about first is, what do you think about the key issues facing libraries and librarians today when it comes to integrated library systems? So, Anya, you want to begin?
Oh, yeah, sure. So what I think that the key issues surrounding integrated library systems is really number one is a willingness to change amongst the librarians and for academic libraries, for their faculty to accept those changes within the discovery mainframe, so to speak. So we have a very wide variety of generational usage amongst our library staff now. We have people coming directly from library school and people that have held their positions for over 20 plus years. And so that interplay between how do you do things and how do you adapt to new technology, I think, is one of the key struggles. That's really not a part of the system, but it leads to migrating to a new system.
Okay, how about your thoughts, Susan?
Please note as I respond, I may drift between ILSs and library industry. I kind of go around into a couple areas. A few things come to mind when I think about the challenges. I think one of the biggest ones is bridging the usability and convenience gap. Our patrons are obviously becoming more and more and more savvy on the internet and have expectations of how products should be usable, how easy they should be, how integrated they should be, and that is a challenge to keep up with as we see the big companies really developing and refining their ability to meet those expectations. And how does how do the ILS vendors and libraries in general keep up with that? I think another area that I'd really like to see I guess, improve over the next 5 years is the industry and ILS vendors' ability to attract large industry-neutral vendors and solutions to integrate with their products. So as we talk about ILSs and vendors, we say, oh, it'll work with this other product that is, by the way, another library niche product. What about having that ILS integrate with Salesforce? Or a great example here that hopefully will make this more tangible for everybody is, let's say, Constant Contact. That's a big communication service for dealing with customers, sending out newsletters. And wouldn't it be nice if we could get the attention of a Constant Contact to integrate with an ILS such that I can see when that patron in their record got the latest newsletter, did they read the newsletter, how long, that kind of information starting to integrate with some of these really big vendors, I think is another again, area I'd like to see move forward. And then finally, it's just the agility and ability to keep pace. That's tough for any development company, and I can't doubt that's not the case with III, who's represented here today, or any of them, is how do you do that in a cost-effective manner? I will say one of the things that I watch in these vendors is I find it interesting the number of products they support, because there is a threshold at which you can effectively build and support and maintain and be financially stable. So I think that ability, like I said, agility, able to keep up and develop smartly while remaining profitable is a challenge for them, obviously. So that's, I guess, some of the things that come to mind.
Sure, that's a lot. So Sarah, I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so sort of chiming in on the tail end of Susan's comment, I think sustainability is a really big concern for libraries. Most of the libraries we're seeing go out to RFP now. The last time they were there was 10 years ago, for some folks 15 or 20 years ago. And so they're not just making choices about how can we do the best, how can we provide the best possible services to our communities today, but how can we make sure we're doing it in a way that's going to be sustainable for the future? And that means thinking broader than just library industry technologies, and really thinking about how the library fits into not just the library system fitting into the library ecosystem, but how the entire library fits into the experience of their users, and of their staff too. It's all about can we continue to provide the level of service we want with the resources we have going forward. And I think that's a big reason folks are sort of grappling with, is it time to move to my next system?
Okay. So yeah, great thoughts so far. So another question that we can think about among ourselves is, so what is new and exciting among today's integrated library systems and library services platform? Think of it in a couple of different ways. Are there key developments in the field that, excuse me, lost my place here. So sorry, key developments in the field that we should be aware of, and are the new systems different in some ways than the ones that we've seen in the past? So let's not keep going in the same order. Susan, do you want to take the first stab at it this time?
Certainly. This is my first work in a library industry, so I don't have a lot of experience with historical products. I will say what's new and exciting. We are seeing the advances in expectations from our users in terms of getting them what they want more easily. What I wanted to share was, I had mentioned to this group here that we actually contracted an external company that focuses, and all they do is usability testing. And the whole point was to show or be able to demonstrate in that particular area a measurable improvement in how the patron and what the patron experience is and finding what they want. And in that particular example, when you say what's new and exciting, is a prior score, passing score, excuse me, is 68 points. Before we made our changes and migrated, our rating was 43. And after the migration, we were at 78. So we are seeing improvements in again, getting content to folks. I think things like the integration of the Overdrive and the ebooks, those are all exciting steps in the right direction. And I will say probably the thing I have been waiting for the longest that's starting to get some traction is the exposure of the data, to not requiring people come to the ILS or the library to find these materials, to find what they want. We want to be front and center when they go out to look on the internet. And that there are steps being taken and obviously structures being established to make that happen. And I think that is a critical step to see really occur in the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay. Sonia?
For me, what's new and exciting is actually the ability to explore the depths of collaboration that a consortia can do in these new systems. No longer are systems as siloed, as even though you have the same product, you might not be able to pull or collaborate the same type of data from that same product. And now on these new integrated library systems, they're more cloud-based, they're more standardized, they're built on standard languages so that you can jointly collaborate. And actually, like, now statistics is becoming more of a, I would say, sexier area, because you can pull together more graphics and pictures and compare yourself to other things, and they're very quick, and you don't have to be living in that analytical world so much that you forget how to speak to people, so that you can just really be excited about your library and what it's doing and how it's interacting with the partners, and how to show your rate of return, or to use the key term assessment of how the library affects student learning. You can really pull those numbers very quickly and timely for your constituencies. So I think that's what's really kind of exciting right now in the system.
Okay. So going from kind of dull reports to exciting statistics and assessment.
Exactly. Yes.
Sure. Sarah?
Susan and Anya both touched on themes that are really key for the work we're doing here. So the cloud developments are amazing because it extends the scalability options for solutions, which means the kind of collaboration that Anya was talking about can be done on a much greater scale. And because you have APIs, you're able to integrate within the library industry, enabling libraries to choose cohorts they want to collaborate with, whether they're all on the same system or using different systems. And you start to talk about things like, it's now a reality to have a statewide system in a way that, everyone's using a single system statewide. It's also a reality to collaborate across states. So both of those things are things that we're seeing in our customer base that are kind of exciting. And then from the API perspective, it also has made some of the new developments in improving the end user experience much easier. So you see trends like more and more mobile tools, and as Susan mentioned, the integration with other vendors and services, and being able to standardize the languages that we use to talk with each other has meant that we can innovate in a more sustainable way going forward. So that's been a very exciting development, something that just wasn't possible with the older systems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been watching the API issue quite a bit, so I agree that that's something that's really important and offers a lot of new opportunities. Okay. So moving right along, so none of these systems, I don't think library systems are ever done. They're always in development. Seems like there's always a next system, but so where are we going? What are some of the things that are on our wish list that maybe aren't in the current generation of systems quite yet? but that you wish were, and so what would some of those be, and what's the path to getting there? This is also a chance where the audience can kind of chime in with questions in chat or Twitter or whatever, and we'll certainly be glad to reflect some of those as they come by as well. So, Anya, do you want to go first on this one?
I'm not really sure. I'm still trying to figure out what all the different things are that I can use to my advantage amongst my libraries are now within
Yeah.
this system. We've only been migrated for a little bit over 115 days at this point. So and not that I'm counting per se,
Not that you're counting.
but it is a good measure of just sanity. Like we've only been doing this for X amount of time. We'll get our feet back underneath us. So what we're really how the Alliance, which is 37 academic libraries, have chosen to use one system. We've used the metaphor of building a house. So just the migration itself and using the system itself is not the end. It's merely the beginning of how we can work together. So we have laid the foundation of a house, and now we're working on building up those walls and furnishing the house. And I think that once we get our feet under us, we'll be able to really answer that question, because we need to explore the depths of how far we can actually go in working together and doing, to quote our strategic agenda, to do things once, to do things the same, and to do things together. So, I'm not quite prepared to answer that question yet.
Well, so I understand your perspective. A lot to do. All these products out there, old and new alike, have so many features that aren't used. So how do you make use of all of them? And then what do you think about things that aren't there?
Or how do you use self-control and not use some things?
Sure.
How do you pare it down to make it the best system for your librarian staff and for your users?
Yeah. I think that there's a lot behind that. So,
Marshall, we do have an audience question.
Okay.
What does the panel think about cross-ILS interoperability for local resource sharing?
I love it.
Are you seeing it, though? How is that coming into play in Orbis Cascade?
So for Orbis Cascade, during our migration, we actually worked with OCLC and Exlibris to create INSIP connectors for WorldCat Navigator, which was what we were using as our consortial borrowing system, and Alma, so that it could talk to Alma as well. And so we were able to have libraries migrate in phases onto Alma and never lose track of our consortial body. We were founded as a resource sharing body. So really, if we had to take that away, we would lose the essence of what made us a group. And I think that for consortial borrowing, more and more ILSs need to come together and to work with all the disparate systems that focus, just even if it's just a modular for resource sharing, to use INSIP or SIP and and discoverability standards so that you can actually find and get the items. I mean, this is really what you can see me get very passionate about, and I could go on forever, but I will stop there. So.
Well,
Okay.
and I'd love to chime in on that if you don't mind, Marshall.
Sure,
I can't
please do.
agree more about the importance of resource sharing. Innovative has had an InReach product that's enabled libraries to connect with other libraries independent of whether they're on an Innovative system or another system for a long time. And what we're seeing going forward is, again, the opportunity to standardize how those connections get made so that we can offer that integration to more and more different types of library systems. And then, as I mentioned before, the scale issue, right? Connecting a dozen libraries is powerful. Connecting 40 libraries is even more powerful. Connecting all the academic libraries in a state or all the academic libraries in a particular region is incredible for researchers. So the ability to take advantage of existing technologies and whether they're, proprietary or standards, to connect libraries based on library needs, not based on what system they're using, is a really important thing today and going forward.
Mm-hmm. So, Susan, do you have something to chime in on this interoperability question before we go back to our wish list?
I'm ready to go back to the wish list.
Yeah. So let me chime in just a little bit before we move away from the interoperability, because it's something that I think is so important. And, there's a lot of work just supporting standards that have been around forever, but then there's all of these APIs among all of the different library systems and non-library systems that are kind of chaotic. So the thing that I'm wishing for in the interoperability space is maybe more coherence in all of the different APIs exposed by library systems and consumed by library systems and what's available on these third-party systems. And that's really a big deal, I think, in the public library ebook lending space. But I think there are a lot of other use cases where that's important. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on through our wish list. And Susan, you seemed like you had something ready to say.
My wish list is never ending. If you look at the link, I hope everybody can see that. I did post an open wish list of ours for functionality, features, service ads, things we are always on keeping our eye out for and how to make that happen. But before I mention a few of those, I want to comment. Anya, you hit on something that's really important, and that is understanding what you already have. I always find it interesting how we are doing some completely kludgy process, and then we go, oh, we didn't realize the product could do this. And so when it goes back to challenges for the vendors and the ILS industry, it's even having the staff within those organizations to understand and be able to communicate and convey what they can do, because we migrated at the end of 2014, and I think that that's probably one of the things we've kind of felt like we've been a little bit walking in mud with, is understanding how to get that feature to work, and it's there, and that can save us a lot of time and effort. So just, I thought that was a great comment on your part. So I have posted the wish list out there, but one of the things is, a wish item is taking the perspective of helping libraries ensure data integrity. And an example of that was an email address. You enter an email address, and when you do, we want that system to go out and check a third-party validation service to say, yep, that person gave you a legitimate email address. And then on a scheduled basis, whether it be weekly or monthly, probably monthly, it runs a check of all our email addresses and says, these 3,000 are now no longer active, flag the patron account, and help us understand to reach out and say, hey, we see that this account needs to be updated, or even proactively work with the patron in order to get that adjusted. Data accuracy, especially patron information, a critical thing we'd like to see improved. Another one that I think is very intriguing is the idea of issuing self-service cards, not just from getting a number. I'd love to see the ability, they have these for bars, I think, and things where you can scan a driver's license and it checks the service again to see if it's actually valid. Well, why can't a person come in, scan their driver's license, it says, yep, it's valid, automatically create the account in the ILS, and give them a barcode number they can slap on the back of a card right then and there, and you think, and it's a validated account. Something much more convenient along those lines. The last one, I guess, again, there's a whole list out there. Two more as an example. I'd like every patron to be able to go in and say, I like this author, and do auto holds. I'm not clear if that's a capability or not yet. I've heard of libraries doing that, but it was always based on them pre-creating something that a user could use or a patron could use, not enabling the patron to do it themselves. So really moving that area forward. And then one that I'm intrigued by is the ability to harvest content created by our communities out there in all the other tools and making that visible. Where can you go and say, I want to see all the tweets and the Facebook posts and the this and the that from all these big services that are posted in one spot, understanding the content your community is developing and engaging the library and the ILS as making that content visible. So it's not just, it's almost taking that global perspective and narrowing it back down to say, hey, that's somebody located nearby me that just did that. Somehow integrating that kind of local community feel and building it up within the ILS. So those are some ideas, and like I said, there's lots more that we have out there.
So, Sarah, of course, we're interested to hear your wish list as representing someone who develops systems. What do you wish? Uh,
So I love customers like High Plains with advocates like Susan because they push us, right? And she and I were talking sort of about her wish list before the call, and how so many of those items are on our wish lists, right? That, conversations that our product managers are already having, and it's just a matter of prioritizing our backlogs to move the right things to the top at the right moment in time. I think one of the things that's I hear about a lot, and it's sort of a broad statement, but I think it will resonate with folks, is I get a lot of requests that come back to this idea of I want real-time everything integrated, and that's something that doesn't exist today, but gosh, we're all getting closer to that. So I'll start with an example that I know really well because it's something Innovative has been able to do. There's this huge need to make sure that you've got real-time integration with your discovery layer, right? That's the best, most current resources for your patrons or your students and faculty, and you want to do it in a way that reduces a workload on your staff. And that's something that we've been able to do with our library services platform and discovery layer, and some other vendors are moving toward that as well. But then there are other examples on the back end. Well, I want real-time automatic integration. Every time I place an order from any vendor, I want it to show up automatically in my library services platform. I don't want to have to do any extra steps to get it there. I want to use the tools of my choice. And that's an area where, we've had ways to batch integrations in the past, but with the APIs that are available with new systems, we're getting closer to real-time integrated everything. It's really a commitment, not just from ILS vendors, but from other providers in the industry to take advantage of these technologies. But the end goal is you completely streamline workflows for librarians and library staff, and that frees up your staff resources to spend time on some of the things that a system can't do for you, that you have to have that live interaction. So our wish list is, we're always looking at how can we make something that isn't exactly real time today more real time? How can we extend the integration that we've got for 1 or 2 providers to 10 or 20 providers? That's something that sort of guides a lot of what we're doing. And to Susan's point, if you have library systems vendors who are thinking beyond the library systems to how do I be real-time integrated with other services outside the library sphere, like social media, like community agencies, then you really sort of get to this magical space where everything is automatically integrated all the time. And we're not there yet, but I do see every single library vendor in the space making effort towards getting there.
So very interesting. But we have a wish list comment on Twitter that says they wish that the systems be disintegrated, which I think is a different direction. How can you use components of a library services platform with other components, possibly with open source discovery or other components that a library has? So, it's just, I recognize this other point of view as well, that integration is great and it's nice to have everything all kind of pre-put together for you. But I hear this occasionally, that there are some who wish to kind of assemble their own and do a pieces and parts approach where they integrate services from a variety of different things. Anybody have any comments on that approach?
Well, I'd love to respond quickly to that, Marshall, because I want to make sure my previous comments weren't misunderstood. I actually agree with that caller. The concept of integration, I think, 20 years ago meant you get everything from one source. And now that concept of integration is really about plug and play. That's what makes integration most powerful, because you can offer libraries the choice to select best of breed solutions. No one vendor is going to be able to build everything that everyone needs fast enough, right? That's just, we laugh all the time in development meetings. I've never worked anywhere where we had too many development resources. That's sort of the nature of software. So the ability to integrate different systems to allow libraries to choose best of breed and take advantage of APIs and standards and their own developer innovations and commercial developer integrations to get that best of breed in a way that's sustainable going forward is really what I'm talking about when I say integration.
Right. And I think that I noticed today is that there's pretty good interoperability between discovery services and backend management systems as a whole, but we're not quite in a space where you can use circulation from one vendor, acquisitions from another, serials management from another, or if that's a good idea. But I think that's my observation of where things are.
And
Well,
I don't know if it's a good idea to be so disintegrated. I mean, I'm a systems agnostic person by trait. I view it as a tool to use. But okay, so you have an iProducts people, you have Google Products people, and those are split communities. They
Entirely.
love or hate the other one. It's a very closed system of thought, and people have chosen one way or another. Now, in my household, we go back and forth just because I want to know what the other side's doing. But we really need to be able to make the best choices within those systems and to use them to their fullest extent. And I don't think disintegrating modular for acquisitions or for circulation would help us understand the products, would help us see how they're supposed to be used together or broken apart. I just think that's a very developeristic point of view, and you might as well just build your own at that point.
Yeah, which isn't necessarily sustainable either.
Correct.
And the other comment I wanted to reflect that I saw on Twitter is that their wish list is that the systems actually work the way they're supposed to. So I think that there's always the vision of how things ought to work, and then the execution of building the systems, and the reality that things don't always work perfectly.
I wanted to comment on the modular. Again, I look at that conceptually and I go, absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. The reality as a vendor is that you're able to develop more seamlessly when you have the code. And I'm not trying to get in an open source discussion or not, but there's obviously trade-offs that as you modularize and try to talk to other components, it adds complexity is what I'm saying, because you have two different entities now trying to make products work together. And so it's just making sure that you have that conscious thought and discussion of the pros and cons of modular versus integrated and what have you in single vendor products.
I think so. Dan, were you going to chime in with a question?
Yeah, we did have an audience question here. I'm wondering, excuse me, I lost it. I'm wondering when vendors will build us a system that works well with native RDA, linked data, and BibFrame. And then the RDA part of that question was seconded and even thirded, I think. So I'll put that one out there.
So I can't speak for what other vendors are doing in this space, but I know linked data is a key initiative here at Innovative. So we've specifically done some work with RDA, but we're very focused right now on BibFrame because, we see in our international market that that's not a choice for the future for some of these libraries. That's something they're actually grappling with this minute. And certainly there's a lot of work going on with BibFrame and linked data in North America as well. So we're very focused on that. When you start thinking about things like central knowledge bases and being able to collaborate large scale on sharing of data, linked data is really a natural fit there. And so that's sort of where we've focused our energies. So the answer to when is always tricky because when sort of breaks down into, well, which specific capabilities, but in terms of exposing data to the broader web, that's something that's already starting to happen. You can sort of see some of the experiment work that Denver Public Library and other libraries are doing with that. And then in terms of being able to, let's not just stop cataloging multiple times, let's stop cataloging at all, right? Let's leverage pieces of linked data from different systems so that you're building what used to be created as records based on the authorized data pieces you have. That's something that we're talking a lot about, but it's a little too soon to talk about when a system will be able to do that. But we're honestly taking our cues from libraries in terms of their priorities around those data formats.
So Anya, have you heard many conversations at Orbis Cascade members about interest in linked data and BibFrame?
I have heard many conversations about them, but I am no expert on them or how it's being framed. I mean, I do know that we have several people on the from the Alliance on Twitter right now, and if they feel free, I'm like looking at my other screen and seeing them, but they can chime in as much as they can. But really, we're just trying to figure out how to get the system to do what we need it to do at this point. And I do know that RDA is on our list of things that we need to pursue, and that our cataloging working group is working with Ex Libris to figure that out and making sure that it works. But
yeah, and I would just chime in to say that RDA is kind of a short-term thing. It's a new set of cataloging rules to go from ACR2 to slightly different version. And that the transition to a pure linked data model and the proposed BibFrame mapping that's now under discussion and being built, is really the next big deal, I think, in integrated library systems. Very much along with the theme of operationalizing innovation, I think this will be the next round of things where library management systems and discovery services are able to kind of be built around concepts of linked data, kind of like the rest of the world, and break out of some of the index-bound discovery and relational database-bound management models. So and I look forward to kind of seeing that in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Susan, did you have something to chime in on this kind of subtopic?
No, just that I'm not an expert in that area either.
Yeah, none of us are. It's the kind of thing where everybody's talking about it, but it's a lot to get a hold of. So I can appreciate that. It's one thing to be aware, and another to have kind of deep technical expertise of the topic.
And Marshall, we had another audience question somewhat related. The question is, it seems like the ILS in the context of this conversation really focuses on the patron side, but what about the metadata side? There are changes afoot there as well. Are vendors responding?
Anybody want to respond to that?
Well, I think the metadata side is sort of similar to what we were just talking about with the different data formats. And absolutely, I mean, again, I can only speak to what Innovative's doing, but we certainly are responding. I think one thing that is has been very important in our strategy in developing a next generation system is understanding that data formats are changing and increasing in number rapidly as different formats increase, right? So you have to be prepared to describe something in a format that doesn't yet exist. And so we've been very focused architecturally in making sure that all of our systems are flexible enough to accommodate not just the data formats that we know about today and that are standard today, not just the data formats that we know are emerging when you think about linked data and BibFrame, but also whatever data formats come, because you don't want to have to re-architect your system if there's a shift in the kind of data, the kind of metadata that needs to be handled going forward. Does that answer the question at all?
Yeah, I think so. And then I also want to chime back a comment that we've just gotten in from Twitter, again, kind of in the wish list category, but it goes along with something we've been talking about. And their wish is that proprietary vendors embrace culture of open source and give back to the community. Kind of join the cathedral and bazaar kind of thinking that Eric Raymond was talking about. And, you know, from my perspective, all of the proprietary vendors make extensive use of open source in their internal development. I'm not expecting proprietary systems themselves to be made open source. But what about giving back in ways of, you know, piece of code that makes use of APIs and things that extend and build on the platforms that each of the vendors provide and the libraries use? People have thoughts about that particular approach?
The vendors that I've worked with currently and in the past have had like a developers network that's external, where people do collaborate on APIs and extending, creating add-ons for Iliad, for example. You know, working with WorldShare, working with Ex Libris products. So they have a new developers network as well, where people are collaborating actively and sharing, you know, a lot of stuff throughout that. So I do think that proprietary vendors are opening up spaces in which it can allow this collaboration. And I think that they need to be careful about their own stuff, because they have to write documentation towards that and to support it. And when you start talking about all these extra add-ons and features that people are developing, you can no longer control the documentation or the system performance once you put those things on.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to add that when thinking about this subject and the comments that have been shared, I look at the priorities for these vendors, and if I had to weight that kind of discussion on giving back to the community, the best way I would react and what I'd want to see in terms of giving back is a stronger alignment with industry standards and best practices, coding, database structure, design, having all my background in IT. Regardless of any platform, I can, you know, I look at it and I go, have a security review done on a platform. I'm like, why are all these ports open? Or why is the database set up this way? So in terms of priority and what would interest me first and foremost is alignment with those industry standards, knowing that we have a strong core foundational product, and then from there build onto it. And that's where you develop into really strong, hopefully, APIs and integration and ability to work with other add-ons and opening up coding to others to interface with your product. So that's just my reaction to that subject.
I agree. Science stuff seems to be its own silo in the industry world, so it's very different from standards.
That's right. We need to look broader than the library world to kind of global industry standards and practices and so forth, because we have to live in that space, survive in that universe. So,
that's certainly, I just want to assure folks, that's certainly a message, at least here, that's definitely part of our fabric as we're prioritizing future developments, is understanding you're no longer an island within a library ecosystem. You're a key enabler of libraries within the larger technology ecosystem.
Okay. So let's go on to one more topic that we have on our list, and that has to do with kind of decision making and changing systems. So when do you know you need to move to a new system? Libraries, tend to use their systems for a long time. I did a study once that showed the average is 12. Some libraries use their systems as long as 25. So, but when is it time to move on to something new? What are the decision points? What are the kind of breaking points where it's really time to kind of do an evaluation and see what your forward-moving options are? So kind of a broad question in the area of changing systems. And Anya, you want to
Yeah.
say something first?
Well, I mean, sure. So we went through a process in 2008 and for a strategic agenda, and a lot of those strategic agendas initiatives actually failed because we couldn't get access to the data as a consortia and individual libraries. We couldn't do collaborative technical services. We couldn't share workflows. We couldn't do the things that we envisioned us wanting to do at that time. So part of that restructuring of that agenda was to really do a marketplace analysis of, is there a system out there that would allow us as a consortia to do those things that we were unable to do? So kind of like Tavis Smiley's, failing up. We're trying to do new and cool things. We couldn't do them, so we're going to try to find the tool in which will allow us to do that. Now, for us, we really had goals and a vision for the future, and that's what led us to have this unanimous vote of switching to not only going from individual ILSs, but to going down to one, to not only going, from all, you can choose whatever discovery system you want, to going down to one and a shared one to that. So it was because of our vision and our policies that we had already had in place. And I think that it has to come from a people group standpoint rather than a technology standpoint to know when you're ready.
Right. Susan.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned 2008. In 2008, as an organization, and we were just talking about here before the call started as well, everyone has a little bit of that the grass is greener kind of effect going on, that, product X is better, or product Y is better, or what have you all the time. And there's this constant push, and it's a healthy thing, to say, what's better, what's out there, what's better. And in 2008, we went and did a pretty good review of the marketplace, and we determined that there was not enough of a difference or value that we could gain from migrating products at that time. So I felt very good about going back, even though there was a lot of pressure to say we want to move on to something new. It's time. When you look at, again, the functionality, what the products could do, we're like, there's just not enough gain. I'm a very strong advocate of process and project management processes, as an example, and I always start these undertakings with the concept of, we as an organization, me as a project manager or leader, has to be able to stand in front of a taxpayer, and my most critical taxpayer, and say, this is why we made this move and invested the staff time and the resource time and the funds to do this, and were we able to actually demonstrate the gains at the end of it. So when we went out again this last round and we're looking, we did see there are gains that can be made. This makes sense, and we dove into the functionality and said, yeah, and we had actually before we made final decisions, we were already calculating ROI based on what we understood could happen with the systems, so that we could project and say we should be able to stand in front of those taxpayers and explain we have saved more than we spent on this undertaking. So when it gets back to when is it the right time to move, it's when, again, you can stand up and say, this is why it was financially and process and all that beneficial to organization, and make sure that you achieve what you set out to do and that there's actually a gain. I think a lot of times I see folks go, oh, that's better, and they make the jump without thinking through that, and then when they get on the other side of the fence, it's a disappointment to say, or when they make the change. And so you want to learn not to put yourself in that position. And I do have a lot of process and decision points also listed at that link that I shared.
Okay. Sure. So Sarah, certainly interested in your point of view on the systems vendor side. What are the drivers and triggers that you think libraries ought to have in mind relative to staying with the current system or moving to the next?
Well, I think it really comes back to what are your strategic goals and what are you trying to deliver to your stakeholders, right? Whether it's your parent institution or your taxpayers. I can't agree more with Susan. There's no reason to change library systems for the sake of change. But when you're looking at your current library practices, I think folks need to ask the question, am I providing the kind of experience to my end users that is personalized for them, enables them to be collaborative, and sustainable for them to continue to take advantage of the library? Am I providing the kind of experience to my librarians and my library staff that meets those same criteria, that makes their work manageable, that provides them with efficient tools, that allows the library to run in a way that is sustainable for how things work today and what we're trying to accomplish from our strategic goals in the future? If the answer is actually we're able to do all the things that really are in our mission to get done, there's sort of no reason to look for the next solution. But if you're running up against, we really would like to achieve an improvement in usability in terms of the public interface tools we offer to our patrons, or we really want to achieve some greater efficiencies in specific workflows that our staff are grappling with. If you're looking around at how do we get those things done, then it's natural to ask the question, are there tools on the market that can help us? I think one thing, though, that folks need to keep in mind, at the same time you're asking, are there tools on the market to help us get to the next level, it's very important that as libraries are evaluating new systems, that they understand what is working well for their libraries today and how that's going to be handled in the new system. Because what you don't want to do is take for granted that you're only going to get the better stuff and that nothing will change with what you're doing today. You want to make sure that it's a net gain going forward. So make sure you really understand what's working well with your operations so that you can be sure those things will continue to work well. Otherwise, you're not going to have the resources to devote to getting to that next level with the new system.
Okay, great. So I think we have just enough time left for one quick round of questions. And the one that we have left has to do kind of with what happens after you migrate. So how do you make the system that you've implemented your own? How much of it can you use out of the box? How much of it takes some configuration? I hate to use the word customization because that brings some loaded meanings. So what do libraries expect as far as being able to deviate and improve and enhance the system that was delivered? Susan, you want to take the first stab?
I can't. Yes, happily. I go back to the prior comment that first step is learning what it has to offer. Customization is not something that we really embrace due to the complexity, the cost, the sustainability. We try to avoid that actually in our organization because we'd rather leverage products and things that already exist rather than try to build from scratch. So the best way I can make use of that system is through understanding it inside and out and leveraging the library community to also help us. I love being able to go, has anybody done this? How did you solve this? And just had that happen the other day, and the gentleman goes, oh, that's what this is. And we said, oh my gosh, we've just spent how much time trying to figure this out, and we found the resource to help us with it. So again, don't really embrace customization or altering what's there as much as learning it thoroughly and making it work as is as best as possible.
Sarah, your thoughts?
So I feel like one of the things to sort of meet in the middle between, innovate, a lot of libraries go to customization because they feel like they have an innovation desire that they don't see being met. And certainly with the new systems, as we discussed, the open database access and the APIs make that more sustainable for libraries who have the developer resources and access to developer communities to do so. But the other thing there is that all those tools make it possible for vendors to innovate together. So if you think about a partnership with your ILS vendor and really with all your providers, we've had several situations where a Lighthouse library has come to us and another vendor with a proposal. Look, we are dying to get this innovative thing done. And it's clear to us and the other vendor how that would benefit the broader library community. And in those cases, good vendors will step up and work together. And we might not be able to do it overnight, but certainly the capabilities of the new systems make it possible for us to do it in a way that's sustainable for us going forward. So that's sort of what my perspective on that.
Okay, Anya?
To thinking about like after making the system your own and really owning it and understanding it, you have to understand the system inside and out in a way. You have to be able to say, okay, your patrons are able to check out items and these things, and if this odd thing happens and you're not totally sure why and the documentation isn't correct and you're hammering at the support people to get it, sometimes those things are okay to let go. But and just leave it up to the mirror world of magic to the vendors at some level. But you really want to know how the overall system works together. And I know for us, we're still in our development phase in partnering with our vendor and actually customizing the system to make it do what we want. So when I say customize, we're removing things from our screens that make no sense for our staff. And in a standard way, so that as the product develops, those would become options for other libraries to purchase as well, or to be able to customize, so that it's still part of the system and is supported by the vendor, and that documentation is written. And I think that's really important, is to work with the vendor in order to make those changes that you want to see standardized and have the ability to be useful outside of your own libraries and your own instances.
Okay, great. So I want to respond to kind of one more comment quickly on Twitter, where the question was, it would be interesting, or the comment was, interesting to know which one would weight more when choosing the ILS, end user experience or staff experience. So my initial response to that is that we're talking about systems that are used primarily by library workers, as opposed to discovery services that are clearly facing library patrons. So yeah, I think the focus of our conversation has been very much on the experience of library staff. That's not to say that there aren't some more indirect implications for how you manage library resources and operations through these systems that could have a positive or negative effect on patrons. But yeah, our conversation has been so much on how library staff use it, because those are the ones who operate these systems.
Mm-hmm.
So that brings us to the end of our hour. We have about a minute and a half left. Want to take it to kind of thank our panelists for chiming in with great discussion. Susan, Sarah, Anya, it's been a lot of fun talking with you for the last hour. And now it's my job to turn it back to Dan for whatever housekeeping details we have to wrap up today's session of American Libraries Live.
Thank you.
Dan, we're not hearing you.
Oh, sorry, had the mute button on. Thank you so much, Marshall. Thank you to our panel. Thank you to our audience for all your great participation. We're looking forward to seeing everybody next month, June 11th, for our upcoming episode, Hunting for a Library Job. And we want to extend a special thanks to Innovative for their fantastic sponsorship that helped make this free event possible. And with that, we will wrap up and hope that everybody has a great day.